I'll be talking about, I practiced for around a decade as an anterior segment surgeon, and I was very much confused by these dark and white lines of the OCT. Any abnormality, I just used to send it to the retina surgeon, and that is what motivated me to take up retina. So I'll teach today as I would have loved someone to teach me at that stage. ये OCT की lines होती क्या है? So we'll do a very basic seminar so that this one will help lay the groundwork for the next session, and we'll enjoy discussing the pathologies in the next session. So this session I'll be just telling you about normal and what all can be named what. So I'll just start with this case which came to me actually day before yesterday. A female 49-year-old complaining of diminution of vision since 2 months, and the vision was 612. No cataract, nothing, no refractive error. So 612 vision, the prima facie, the fundus looked pretty normal to me, but this OCT, we can very clearly make out this defect, that is in the ellipsoid junction loss, which may be due to various pathologies which will be discussed later. So this is just to tell you the importance of OCT in daily OPD. Even when you see a normal fundus or a fundus that prima facie looks normal, OCT can always unveil pathologies that are there that we can't see. So I'll start very basically from inside to outside. These are the codes of the eye. The retina in orange, the red shows the choroid, and the sclera shows the blue. So this is the inside and that is the outside. And from inside to outside, these are the layers of the retina. I hope the PGs have revised the layers of retina. I asked you to revise on the group. So these are the layers of retina, and I'll just orient them according to how we see the OCT. So the inside will form the topmost layer and the outside will form the bottommost layer. So these are the layers of retina. Now in the normal macular OCT, the international nomenclature for OCT has said that every OCT should be divided into 5 broad segments. First is the VR interface shown in green, then comes the inner retina shown in yellow, the outer retina shown in red, and the RP Brooks membrane complex shown in purple, and then the choroid which is in blue. So these are the 5 segments we should read any OCT in. The same thing shown on the grayscale. This is the VR interface, and then comes the inner retina, the outer retina, the RPE Brooks membrane complex, and then the choroid. So these are the 5 segments how you should read every OCT. Now starting with the VR interface. So the VR interface is nothing much. Vitreous is usually echo-free, means there's nothing to cause backscattering of the light, and this is the premacular bursa, that is the area in front of the macula. And then there is the posterior highlight, which is a hyper-reflective line. It can be made out only in cases of posterior vitreous detachment, which has happened due to age or pathology. And many cases we might not see the posterior vitreous detachment. Now, because there are very few, I'll just name the few pathologies or things that you might find at the VR interface. First is the vitreomacular adhesion, where the foveal contour is still maintained. Then vitreomacular traction, where the foveal contour is distorted. Then comes vitritis. These are very subtle vitreous cells that you can make out in cases of vitritis. And vitreous hemorrhage, the OCT is not an investigation of choice in case of vitreous hemorrhage, but in case we do a vitreous hemorrhage, the RBCs can be seen in the vitreous like this. Then comes astroid hyalosis. These are very highly hyperreflective lines, and we can see sometimes the reflection going up to the choroid also. So these are some pathologies that you can see in the vitreous. And the most common one, that is the epiretinal membrane. You see it on the fundus, and on the OCT at the level of ILM, it appears as a hyperreflective layer. Now I'll just move on to the inner retina. So let's see how we know what's the normal inner retina, how it looks like. So the inner retina on the OCT is made up of many hypo and hyper bands. So I'll just again revise. Hypo means more towards the black, hyper means more white it is. So what we need to remember is what are the hyper lines, and that will help us determine what are the hypo lines. So the hyper lines are usually the lines that are the layers that are horizontally arranged or are highly pigmented. They will be hyper. So let's see the inner limiting membrane, the inner plexiform layer, and the outer plexiform layer. I'll show you again here. This is the inner retina, also known as the neurosensory retina. So inner retina and neurosensory retina are same. So as we know, the RNFL layers are moving horizontally like this. So any layer that is horizontally arranged will give a hyper reflection. So the RNFL is going to give a hyper reflection. We can see this RNFL hyper reflective. Then comes the inner plexiform layer. Inner plexiform layer, where the synapses between the bipolar and the ganglion cells are formed. So these will also be shown as a hyperreflective zone. So this layer that we see here, after the RNFL, the next hyper layer is the inner plexiform layer. And then comes the outer plexiform layer, which outer plexiform layer, again the next hyperline is the outer plexiform layer. So if we keep these in mind that these are the hyperlines, we can easily make out what are the hypo areas in between. That is the nuclear layers. So that's done with the inner retina. The outer retina, comparatively, it's pretty easier to determine, but very, very important, because the layers of the outer retina are very important in prognosticating the vision of the patient. So let's see, outer retina is made up of just 4 hyperreflective bands. 4 hyperreflective, what are those? First is the external limiting membrane, which is just formed by the foot pedals of the molar cells. This one, the topmost one. And then comes the ellipsoid zone. So this ellipsoid zone was previously known as the, so this ellipsoid zone is, you can see the inner segment on the outer segment and the inner segment of the photoreceptors. So this was previously known as ISOS junction. ISOS junction is now known as the ellipsoid zone. Ellipsoid zone is really important because any breach in the ellipsoid zone will help us prognosticate whether the patient will, how much vision patient will get in cases of chronic atrophy, as well in cases of solar retinopathy, welding arc retinopathy, or in cases of some dystrophies. If the ellipsoid zone is having a deficit, that means patient will have poor vision. Then comes the interdigitation zone. So interdigitation zone means the fingers are getting crossed together. You see the RPE and the photoreceptors, they are interdigitating here. So that is what is the interdigitation zone. And then comes the RP-Brooks membrane complex, which is the last one. So many a times the IZ zone and the RP zone are fused together. So we are sure to see 3 hyperlines in the OCT for sure. That is the external limiting membrane, the ellipsoid zone, and the RP-Brooks complex. And IZ may or may not be fused with the RP-Brooks complex. Then many a times we get these photos also false color coding, though I think most of us like to prefer the HD radial or the black grayscale. But in here the hyperreflections are shown by the red and orange color, moderate by the green, and black by the no reflections as black. Then comes the choroid. So choroid has 3 kinds of capillaries. Most adjacent to the RP-Brooks membrane, small capillaries are the choriocapillaries, these smaller ones. Then comes the medium-sized vessels, that is the Sattler's layer, and then the large-sized vessels, there are the choroid vessels. Again, discussing them, these are the choriocapillaries, the small ones, then the Sattler's layer, and these are the Haller's layer. So they have quite a bit of significance nowadays because we have a new terminology called as pachychoroid. So in pachychoroid is basically the atrophy of the inner layers, that is the choriocapillaries, and these outer layers become more wide. That is called as pachychoroid. That is beyond the scope of this. But in case of pachychoroid, we should always try to image the choroidal layer. Now, we know what to see on OCT. Let's see what not to see. That means what things we should ignore on OCT. Some artifacts, very commonly seen artifact in case of high myope, you see in case of any long axial length, an inverted image can be seen adjacent to the regular image. This is vignetting, which is due to the loss of signal. Motion artifact, patient moves and you see something like this. So these are motion artifacts, always a wise decision to repeat the OCT in such cases. And a beautiful macular hole, pseudo-macular hole formed by a blink artifact. So the patient was imaging and this is the point where he blinked and that caused this artifact to happen. So I'm done with teaching the basic OCT. I would like, if anyone would like to comment on these 2 OCTs, especially any PGs or fellows, anyone would like to comment on these OCTs? Anyone? Any information you are getting from these OCTs? I can hear many murmurs but no bold answers. So I'll just start. Yeah. Very good. So one is vertical, one is horizontal section. So few tips and tricks. This image, you can see that the RNFL is thicker on this side. So what does this mean? Always imagine the nose towards the thicker side of the RNFL. So we can easily say that this is the left eye of the patient. So even if the image is not labeled, Seeing the thickness of the RNFL in a horizontal scan, you can say that this is the nasal side of the OCT. Now this is a vertical scan. As we can see, this is a vertical scan, and this has something which used to confuse me a lot. These are these. So vertical scan means if this is the fundus photo and the scan will be running like this. So it is crossing through all the vessels. So these small hyperreflective dots, these are vessels, and they have a back shadowing also. Should not be confused with any kind of pathology. Now I'll just mention few names that ma'ams will be discussing in the further sessions. Some spot diagnosis, dome-shaped macula seen in myopes. 20% of the myopes might have this. This is a dome-shaped macula, a cause for many myopic pathologies. Then coloboma, nothing much about it. So high myope OCTs we have all seen appear like this. So the first OCT was taken by an intern, and then the senior optometrist went and took the second OCT of the same patient and the same eye. Any idea how the images are, the second image is better? Anyone? Why did the second image become better? So there are few tips and tricks for high myope acquisition. We sometimes struggle with it. So the first and the best tip is this EDI, this function called as EDI or extended depth imaging. This is always present in OCTs. You switch this on, high myope acquisition becomes easier. Also in cases where you are suspecting pachychoroid or choroidal diseases, it's easier to image the choroid. Enhanced depth imaging. Then the second trick is when you are entering the data of the patient, in high myopes, you can always enter the spherical equivalent of the patient. So the machine automatically focuses at that level. And then comes, if nothing else works, make the patient wear his spectacle correction. Automatically you will get a better image. So this was just a few tricks about high myope acquisition. I'll tell you what is edema. Edema is of many types. This is subretinal fluid, a neurosensory detachment. If the fluid is here, that is called as subretinal fluid. Intraretinal fluid is this fluid, intracystic spaces, and this is spongiform edema or diffuse edema. So these are the kinds of edema. Then, but everything that swells is not edema. Many a times we get patients with CSR being injected. So everything that swells is not edema. So you need to differentiate between neurosensory detachment and edema. So these are both pictures of neurosensory detachment, but due to starkly varied pathologies. Any idea what are these? First edema is first neurosensory detachment is a very common thing. CSR. It has a pigment epithelium detachment which gives away. So second one, any idea? So the OCT, the detachment is going beyond the scope of OCT. There's ONL fuzziness here. This is a detachment. Okay. So next we come to hyperreflective materials. Hyperreflective materials, most common is drusens. So drusens are extracellular deposits between in the interface between RPE and the Bruch's membrane. So here the RPE itself is lifted. So the drusen is actually under the RPE. These are drusens, and sometimes there is deposit over the RPE. So these are called as pseudodrusens or reticular pseudodrusens. Both are kinds of drusens. Then these are hard exudates. Not all of these, only the ones having the back shadows. These are called as hard exudates. Their importance pathology I won't be discussing, but you should know when to call it a hard exudate. And these hyperreflective dots. Any idea what are these? These are called as hyperreflective foci, hyperreflective dots, hyperreflective. So HRDs or HRFs, they don't have any kind of back shadowing. Okay, so this image I'll be posting on the group, the difference between hard exudates and hyperreflective foci. And again, another hyperreflective thing which I've already explained, these are just vessels. Now, ellipsoid junction, I previously mentioned ellipsoid junction is a very major thing. So this is a patient of solar retinopathy that I had who had an ellipsoid junction loss. That will explain visual, less vision in many patients.
Please go one slide back. Many normal OCTs have this gap. What is this?
Sir, I'll come to it, sir. Wait for a few slides. So again, a small brief on pigment epithelium detachment. Neurosensory detachment, when was RP is in its place and rest of the retina is detached. Now the retinal pigment epithelium itself is detached. That is called as PED. PED are of 4 common types. The serous PED appears as a dome-shaped elevation over a hyporeflective space, and the Bruch's is seen as a hyperreflective line. Then comes the drusenite PD, which has some hyperreflections inside the, this is not as hyperreflective as the serous PED. Then a hemorrhagic PD, the blood beneath the RP appears intensely hyperreflective, causing signal attenuation, and no structures beneath this blood can be seen. And then lastly, the fibrovascular PED, which shows sub-RP space filled with multiple hyper and hypobands. This is the onion ring sign. So this is a fibrovascular PED. Then there is scarring. The more appropriate OCT terminology for it will be subretinal hyperreflective material. So subretinal hyperreflective material, actually SHRM is a wide terminology, scar is one of them. And finally, I come to atrophy. So these are all pictures of atrophied OCTs. They may be due to different causes, but ultimately they are all atrophies. But seeing the type of atrophy, we can actually will give a hint to what kind of disease the patient was having. We cannot comment much without seeing the fundus picture also, but this one is due to MACTIL. So it is limited to the parafoveal region, and we can see that the foveal umbo is widened and it's starting in the inner retina. Now this pathology is due to CSR, and we can see the inner retina is more or less conserved and only the outer layers are involved. This is a myopic atrophy, and this is due to geographic atrophy due to ARMD. So no, it's not coffee time yet. It's not cake time yet. Just what this cake, also known as gâteau. Anyone has any idea what I'm referring to? In French, the cake is called gâteau, and our OCT has our own kind of cake, the foveal cake. What sir has asked. This is called as the foveal gâteau. Due to high concentration of cones of the nuclei of the cones in this area, there's always a small elevation in this area. And sometimes when you are seeing too many OCTs trying to find out pathology, we consider this also as a pathology. So this is a normal appearance. This is known as the gâteau nuclear or foveal gâteau, which is a very normal finding. I'll end my talk with this take-home message. Every hairy beast is not a lion, so always correlate clinically. Always see the fundus before you come to an OCT diagnosis. Thank you so much.
Let's start on the last side of that what we call the umbo.
Umbo.
Actually, this is a very vital and important sign in that if you want to know that your OCT is right from the foveal center, if you see the umbo, you are sure. If you don't see the umbo, you have to think twice. So, it's right from the foveola. So if it is from the foveola, you will be able to see umbo, because here is where the concentration of cones is the maximum. So, if you don't see this, the technician while taking the OCT image must have gone left, right. Okay, so this should be seen if it's a foveal cut, if it's right going to the fovea. Just you can ask some questions if you want, and
Anything anyone would like to ask? Any question?
how would you know? See, she showed a slide saying that this is neurosensory detachment and that is CSER. But suppose I have one very round looking loculated fluid, and I don't know whether that is neurosensory detachment or a pigment epithelial detachment. How would you know which is what? Both will be high reflective. So actually the high reflective layer which she showed down, you can show one of the images. Go back to that image of, if possible. Okay, since you have removed it. So what you best do is go from the periphery where it is normal, where the scan is normal, and then follow it, and then see which layer is separating. If your pigment epithelial layer is separating, the below layer will be a little hyporeflective because it's only the Brooks now. But if it is neurosensory layer which is separating, then RP is down. Then you will have a nice, highly reflective layer down. And this is one of the most important differentiating features, because you need to differentiate, because a neurosensory retina is almost always pathological and needs treatment. Pigment epithelial detachment may be a serious detachment which you may watch over a period of time.
Similarly, the detachment continuous to the periphery was RD. If it is continuous towards the optic disc, that is optic disc.
Plus
Maybe.
the corrugations. If you see the inner surface, it was corrugated. So that
ONL
usually-
fuzziness was
that
there.
the inner surface is like this.
Hmm.
That usually means it's a rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. If it is inner surface is smooth, which is what Sir is referring to, usually optic disc maculopathy will not have those corrugations, even though it is a neurosensory detachment. Inner surface is always smooth in that.
It's always better to go on the machine and see the picture yourself, because printouts sometimes don't give the complete information. So we get more information when we are sitting on the machine, what we want to see. So it's always better.
So she didn't mention about the scans which are available. So you could have a macular cube, you could have a radial scan, you could have a raster scan, you would have a 5 raster scan. For some images, some machines now have a 12 raster scan, or you may have a HD21, which is a high definition 21 longer scan, or you may have a high definition focused scan or single line scan. Single line scan, when you know exactly where is the pathology, you can take the single line scan because there will be 100 A scans passing through that, and you will get a very high resolution, good scan from the area of pathology. When you don't know where to go, then usually better is to go with a radial or a raster. This advantage of radial is if it's a foveal pathology, the interline distance is minimum in a radial scan. So a small hole, a micro hole, you'll be able to pick on a radial scan because that is a micro macular hole. So you'll pick up there. So you should choose a radial scan. So the resolution will depend upon the distance between two lines of a scan. If you have seen OCTs, you have the radial line means it has about 8 or 10 radial lines. So the distance between the two lines will tell you if it is more, then the resolution is less. If it is less, that means resolution is more. Why? Because between the two lines, the number of times the scanning is done is the same. So if the distance is small, that means the same number of scans in that speed is going through a smaller area. So your resolution will be more. If the distance is more, that same n number of scans, say time domain used to have 400 scans per second. New ones have 1 lakh scans. Now you have those many scans going through a larger area. So naturally the resolution is less. So wherever you want more resolution, you should choose a scan which is thinner, closer lines. So if you have a radial, naturally in the center, the distance between two lines is very, very small. Right? But if you see the periphery of there, it widens. So a pathology which is close to arcades will be better seen on a raster, but a pathology which is close to the fovea will be better seen on a radial. I think people who are using OCT would know that this is how it is. So there's a reason why these scans are there. And macular cube, why you should always do macular cube? Because if you want to quantify tomorrow what was the CST, how much was the fluid, how much was thickening, that only comes on cube. That measurement will come automatically from the machine only if you have done cube. If not done cube and you've gone to raster and radial, then tomorrow you will have to sit down and take calipers and measure it yourself. So,
6x6 vision, there are many pathologies which we can miss, even the routine scans. But what I was thinking, most of the time we give the assistants only to come with the OCT picture.
So ask the assistant to do the picture, but go to the machine yourself and see the. Any doubt? Because single scan will not give you answer. You go back and see all possible scans. So my technicians hate me because I will ask them to do radial also, raster also, this also, that also, and I will mention in the file what all needs to be done. Even then they will still skip some. So again, if she shows those slides, if very important to see on the machine, when you see the scan, you don't realize the artifact. The blink artifact is not seen in the machine. Why? Because the machine has got artificial intelligence. It will interpret it and give you a report. But if you see that focus where just stop there. So here your machine is smart. It has given you some kind of a OCT picture. But look at this. This is the IR image which I am talking about. This the machine, this is not correct. Patient has moved. You don't need to be a superhuman to understand that here there is motion and and because the patient, once they blink, you get these lines. This is immediately seen. If you see a printout, you will not be able to see. You will miss it because the machine is already automatically formed. It will form a picture out of nothing also. So you need to see this. If you see this and you see these lines, this is of no good. Then if you see, there's a way to read OCT. I don't know whether I have time to do that. Just connect my laptop once more. Though this was not my topic for the day, but this will help you in